Members, the first item on the order paper is member statements. As this is a new item of business, I want to provide a very brief outline of how member statements are to be managed in the plenary. If members wish to be called and make a statement, they should do so by rising in their places. Those members who are called will have up to 3 minutes to make their statement. Any member whose statement is not compliant with the provisions of Standing Order 24A will be asked to resume their seat. Standing orders provide that when selecting a member to make a statement, that I shall have regard to the balance of opinions in the Assembly. I shall therefore ensure that in any period set aside for this business, I select members from a range of parties. However, it is unavoidable that there will be occasions when it will not be possible in the time available to select all members who wish to make a statement, and as with all items of business, it is not in order to challenge the selection. I will seek to ensure that over time all members who wish to make a statement have a fair opportunity to do so. Members should further note that statements will not be subject to debate or questioning. Interventions will not be permitted, and I will not take points of order on this or any other matter until the item of business has finished. I have spoken to the Principal Deputy Speaker and both the Deputy Speakers, and we are all at one in thinking that we will manage this as we go on, and we see how that works out. Obviously, this has to be set within standing orders as approved by this Assembly, and we will try to manage this to the best of our ability in the most fair way possible. And as I say, we will continue to review the outworking of this standing order and its application, just to make sure that all members are treated fairly and equally. If that's all clear, then I will begin. And I call Linda Dillon.
And I rise today as a very proud South Armagh woman, but equally as proud to be a representative of East Tyrone, and I rise to congratulate our Tyrone All-Ireland winners. I have to say that the GAA is a very close family, and I also wish to convey my condolences to the Hume family. The GAA is very much a family, and right across the country, right across the 32 counties, I think that there will be very few homes that won't have had an eye to the All-Ireland on Saturday. And whether you were supporting Tyrone or whether you were supporting Mayo, I think that what you saw on that field was young men who played the shirts off their backs to entertain all of us. And they are a credit to their county, they are a credit to their clubs, but they are also a credit to all of the volunteers, all of the people who work in the GAA all year long, who train the underage teams, who go out in the fields and the pitches in the very difficult days and get on with it and take youngsters all over the county and all over the country. And to those volunteers I want to pay a special tribute, because days like All-Ireland finals don't happen without them. And I have to say a special tribute to Paddy Hampsey, who is my neighbour, who is related to me through marriage and who is the captain of the Tyrone team. A very modest young man, a man who led that team to an All-Ireland final and won it. And we're very, very proud of him. His club, Colisland, Fianna, Ilnagool, are extremely proud of him, as are all of the clubs of their players who played on Saturday. But I can't let this, whilst it is all celebratory, I can't let this moment pass without mentioning the fact that the BBC completely ignored that there were 3 Ulster teams in All-Ireland finals over the weekend. And whilst I accept there is a right issue, the BBC have a responsibility, because all of those volunteers and all of those players that I talk about are also licence payers. They pay the fees to the BBC. They pay their wages. And it is time that the BBC sat down with RTE and with the GAA and made a way to ensure that every single supporter of GAA can see our games on BBC. This should be a protected game. All-Ireland finals should be protected, so that everybody right across this island, from whatever community or background you come, is able to see the GAA finals, because there is nothing like it in this country, and I would argue in this world. There aren't too many sports that can fill, amateur sports at that can fill a stadium of 80,000 people. And it is a very, very proud thing for us as Gaels that we can do that. And as I say, we are a family. We are a family who support each other through very difficult days, and the GAA has done that through this pandemic. And I think that we need to pay tribute to all of the GAA, but to my own county of Tyrone in particular, for the work they have done and the efforts they have made in their community through the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Christopher Stalford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Firstly, thank you for undertaking this initiative, because I think it will be a useful opportunity, hopefully, for members to raise issues that perhaps an adjournment debate would be too long for, or an urgent question submitted may not be called. I want to raise the issue of the destruction of the built heritage of the city of Belfast. One of the city's best features is, of course, its built heritage. From the Georgian era, we have Clifton House and May Street Presbyterian. In the Victorian era, you have the Lanyon Building at Queen's, or the Custom House. The City Hall is an Edwardian building. Pre-World War II, we sit in a great example of it. And then in the more modern era, the Waterfront Hall and Titanic Belfast are also signature building projects in the city. Red brick streetscape, nearly got that out, is a uniquely Belfast feature, as are city trees. And one of the examples is in my constituency, is at Ravenhill Avenue. Associated with such streetscape and city trees is also granite curbing. And the granite curbing has been in place in Ravenhill Avenue for generations. Yet the Department for Infrastructure has seen fit to tear this curbing out and to replace it with something of no architectural merit whatever, in the form of concrete. I wonder, sir, what is the carbon footprint of morn-hewn granite that has been there for generations in comparison to concrete that will have to be replaced once probably every 10 years? Another unique feature of the city that you and I both live in, around the place you will find ex-servicemen's houses. These were built for veterans returning from the First World War. Lloyd George talked about homes fit for heroes. And I have off Ravenhill Avenue, as the name would suggest, various streets named Earl Haig. They were named after Field Marshal Haig. Similar wanton destruction has taken place there, with granite curbstones that have been in place for generations, ripped out and replaced with grey concrete. The question, sir, I suppose, is what sort of a city do we want to live in? Do we want Belfast to continue to have pride in itself, pride in its architecture, or do we wish our city to become a mass of glass, steel and concrete? Because I hope that that is not the direction in which government policy is going, but the lived experience of my constituents in Ravenhill Avenue and in Earl Haig has been that. We need to preserve our built heritage, not replace it with grey, bland concrete. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I call Mark Durkan.
I rise to call on Minister Hargey not only to oppose the UK Government's plan to withdraw the £20 universal credit uplift, but to plan and prepare to protect people here should the Tories persist with this punitive policy. The SDLP has always been critical of universal credit. We voted against the welfare reform bill when others here rubber-stamped it. Our opposition has been vindicated. Every week, I'm sure all of our offices help people navigate the complex system and, sadly, often have to direct desperate people to food banks for support during the cruel 5-week wait for their first payment. The £20 uplift was a welcome, albeit surprising, move by the Tories to provide a safety net to prevent people falling further into poverty as a consequence of the pandemic. Now, Boris Johnson seems determined to revert to type. The consequence of this will be catastrophic, and they will hit harder here than anywhere else. Families and individuals will be plunged into poverty. If they needed this help 18 months ago, they sure as hell need it now. We have seen living costs spiral, be it the cost of heating a home or the cost of feeding a family. Rising property values have led to huge hikes in rents. People are at breaking point. They can't afford to lose £1,000 a year, and we can't afford for them to lose it either. The cut isn't only cruel, it's completely short-sighted. What will be the cost of removing this lifeline on health, on education, on homelessness? What will be the cost on people? What will be the impact of taking £55 million out of our economy over the next 6 months? This isn't just an issue that affects the poor or scroungers, as the Tories so cruelly label those reliant on support. Around a third of claimants are working. We need business organisations to wake up and speak up. The impact on local businesses will be dire and will cost jobs, forcing more people onto benefits. Minister Hargey has written to DWP to oppose this cut. We welcome that, but she must do more to protect people here. What COVID money hasn't been spent? What money for welfare mitigations will be unspent, as there's no sign of them yet? What is the Minister going to do? Let's hope it's a lot more than write a letter. We're a devolved government. DFC has welfare powers back again after some parties here handed them over to the Tories to hurt more vulnerable people here. I implore Minister Hargey to use these powers to protect people here if this cut can't be derailed at Westminster, where her party won't even go to vote against it.
Thank you, and I call Steve Aiken.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. I rise to acknowledge the 20th anniversary on Saturday of the heinous attack on the United States that resulted in the deaths of close on 3,000 innocent people in New York, Washington and in Pennsylvania, and rightly for us all to reflect on the effect that that day has had. For many of us ex-servicemen and women, for those whose families had been drawn into the conflicts afterwards, in Iraq, Afghanistan and elsewhere, this event and the precipitous and ill-timed withdrawal from Kabul and elsewhere has created a considerable degree of anguish and disquiet amongst our veterans community. And I know from personal experience that it has resurfaced memories and feelings that bring sadness and not a little anger to the fore. May I, Mr Speaker, commend the work of all those in the veterans community and also the work of our Veterans Commissioner, Mr Danny Kinahan, for the work that he is doing, but also to highlight the many helplines and levels of support that are out there for us all. And may I encourage our ex-service community to use them. Mr Speaker, I'd also like to reflect on another effect of those horrific events of 9/11, and that was on the remarks made by Richard Haas this weekend when he said, 20 years ago in Dublin and Belfast, a rare good thing to stem from 9/11 was I could credibly argue to Sinn Féin and Provisional IRA leaders that the end of the Americans, even their supporters excusing their terrorism, has ended. Decommissioning followed on quickly. It is unfortunate that it took an attack of mass terrorism to achieve this recognition among some within the Irish-American community. But the recognition that terrorism, from no matter what source, is fundamentally wrong was made clear to the Republican movement and the IRA and Sinn Féin in particular. It is another example, Mr Speaker, of how pointless and nugatory terrorism is, and that in a democratic society there is no role in any way for guns, bombs and terror, is a lesson that, regrettably, some still need to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, and I call Stewart Dickson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, what I want to address this morning in this opportunity for debate is around the actual opportunity for members to make statements in the chamber. I believe passionately in the democracy that has been devolved to us here in Northern Ireland, and I believe passionately in this Assembly and the ability for members to speak on behalf of their constituents. However, Mr Speaker, I believe that the priority of business for this Assembly should be that of the ability to debate bills, to listen and deal with executive business, to deal with the committees of this Assembly, to deal with adjournment debates which come up on a constituency basis and allow the MLAs representing their constituencies to have a debate about very local issues. While I welcome this opportunity for debate, and all that I have heard this morning has been excellent, and I have no dissent with any of the voices in the chamber, and I want also to add my and my party's congratulations to Tyrone on their win yesterday. Mr Speaker, what I would ask the Assembly to do in my opportunity to speak this morning is to invite the Business Committee to revisit the timing of this debate. In other jurisdictions where these debates take place, they happen at the end of the business day, after the opportunity has been given to members to deal with the key priorities of democracy in the Assembly chamber, that of debating bills, that of debating business of the Assembly, that of working with the Executive to deal with the business that they bring in front of us. So in no means, and by no means wishing to diminish this debate, but I believe that the timing is perhaps out of kilter. The press will take an opportunity to listen to the things that we are saying in this members' half hour, and I don't want to diminish that. But I really do believe that it should happen at the end of our business day rather than at the beginning of the business day, because what we should be doing is setting the tone for business through our business committee, through our scrutiny of bills and through our democratic representation of those people who elect us to come here. So I'd invite the Speaker and the Business Committee to revisit the timing of these types of debate, but in no way am I diminishing the opportunity for members to have these discussions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. And I call Jim Allister.
Thank you. Saturday certainly was a remarkable sporting spectacle. We saw unbelievable skill. We saw great grit and determination. We saw relentless pursuit of the goal and heart-stopping excitement for those who watched. Little wonder that there was such frenetic and ecstatic waving of flags in the colours of red and white and blue as Emma Raducanu swept to victory in the US Open. How timely it was that at that very same time we had the last night of the proms. And as Land of Hope and Glory was belting out in the Royal Albert Hall, Emma was delivering hope and glory on the other side of the Atlantic. And I want to congratulate and pay tribute to her. County Tyrone also had its own experience of hope and glory on Saturday, thanks to the very wise decision of Sam Maguire to leave the EU. And as they enjoyed their hope and glory, that was a wise move by Sam Maguire, well done in that regard. Brings me to my primary topic, Brexit. I want to make it abundantly clear in this House that tinkering with the union dismantling protocol, extending grace periods, doing all of those cosmetic things will not change the fundamental objection to that obnoxious protocol. And whatever changes are made, and I note that the vigorous implementers have now toned down their foolhardy demands, and they're talking about tinkering, etc. But whatever changes are made, the fundamental test of all of that is Northern Ireland still left in a foreign single market for goods, subject to a foreign customs code, a foreign VAT regime, overseen by foreign laws and adjudicated upon by a foreign court? And if that is so, then any of those changes are useless in terms of removing the obscenity that is the protocol, and do nothing to render acceptable. What needs to be done is the EU needs to surrender its sovereignty back to the United Kingdom over Northern Ireland.
Thanks, the member. And I call Paul Frew.
Mr. Speaker, you may not know, and this House may not know, that for the first time in our history, there will be an event taking place this Friday, the 17th of September, in the Ormeau Park, Belfast, that will refuse entry to people solely on the grounds that they are not vaccinated for COVID. The Department of Health and the Department of Communities are funding and supporting this event with public money of £75,000. Deep concern has been expressed to me that I share regarding the human rights implications of the stipulation that tickets for this free event are only available to those who have had a vaccination. There are real fears that this represents active discrimination against those unable or unwilling to receive the vaccine due to age, medical exemptions or reasons of conscience. In light of this, Mr Speaker, there is an onus, is there not, on the Minister of Health and the Minister of Communities to explain the rationale for the allocation of funding to this event and to restate their commitment to treating the personal freedoms we all should enjoy in society equally, regardless of their vaccination status. The Minister of Communities and the Minister of Health should outline the criteria and communications plan used to award £75,000 worth of funding to this event, and also to outline to this House and to the public what risk assessments have taken place by the departments when awarding funding and support to this event, considering anyone who has and is suffering from COVID at the time of this event can attend it and spread the virus as long as they have been vaccinated. I think this is deeply concerning for human rights, and I think the two ministers involved, the Minister of Health and Minister of Communities, should come before this House and give a statement on this issue, an issue of grave concern for many of my constituents and wider population of Northern Ireland. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, and I call Colm Gildernew.
I would like to raise, the issue of the importance of the sustainability of these institutions in the context of the ongoing public health situation which we are dealing with, and the threat to collapse this Assembly from the DUP leader, Jeffrey Donaldson. We are in the midst of a public health crisis, and in many ways even at the height of that crisis. And we are seeing a situation where health trusts yesterday are appealing for staff to come in from their leave to help to man our hospitals and our health services. We have other health trusts asking people to use other services rather than turning up to their emergency departments, given the pressures that they are experiencing. And those staff who are being taken in from those much-needed breaks, they have now been fighting with this and struggling with this pandemic for over 20 months. They don't have the option of walking away. They're walking into our hospitals. They are donning PPE gear and going in there to fight to save lives and to protect health. And this is the outworking of the DUP themselves, delivering a Brexit that everyone and many people here stated was not in our interests. It's the outworking of internal politics within the DUP, and indeed the fact that they have been spooked by others outside their party into knee-jerk reactions and into threats of this nature. People are also asking, is this a vanity project by the DUP leader in order to create a vehicle for himself to get into this Assembly? And if that's the case, would it not be possible that one of the gentlemen opposite could make way for their leader and allow him into this Assembly without creating the chaos, the uncertainty and the inertia that would flow from this threat? We are heading into one of the most difficult winter periods that we are ever likely to see in our health service. Our hospitals are currently operating at 104%, and we have not seen yet the full impact of winter flus and all of the other pressures that we know exist and that will come to bear. Patients, staff and the public deserve better from this Assembly and from political leaders here. Political leadership is needed now more than it has ever been. And I have to say, and I believe many people believe, that collapsing this institution at this time would be irresponsible, reckless and unforgivable. And I would ask the party opposite to take care and consideration in these matters at this time.
You call Chris Lyttle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that member statements are to be on a single item, so I rise on behalf of the Alliance Party to add my congratulations to everyone involved with the All-Ireland champions Tyrone on winning the county's 4th GAA All-Ireland football title. This achievement is testament to the hard work and dedication of the new management team in their first season in charge, particularly in the context of COVID and the obstacles that this pandemic places in the way of getting a special squad of players to the standard required to achieve this historic victory. It's testament to the value of sport in our community, to the value of hours of volunteer coaching and sporting sacrifice and endeavour, despite the obstacles put in our way. It demonstrates the value of youth development for any sport, with the backbone of this fantastic Tyrone squad being the under-21 team that Brian and Fergal coached to All-Ireland victory in 2015. It's a great victory for Ulster sport, finally ending Dublin's dominance, and great credit and commiseration must go also to Mayo on their performance in the final and their victory over Dublin in the semi-final. Congratulations to everyone in Tyrone. You have raised the hope and morale of a county and a province at an extremely difficult and challenging time. Enjoy your celebrations.
Thank you, and I call Gerry Carroll. The member has 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Saturday marked 20 years since the tragedy of the September 11th Twin Tower attacks, in which almost 3,000 people lost their lives in an unspeakable tragedy. My thoughts and sympathies are with all those who lost their loved ones in that terrible, terrible day. The Twin Towers attack was one of those moments that we all remember the events of the day and what happened in the years that followed. In response to a terrible tragedy in New York, the neocons and New Labour, with their many backers, including some in this House, set the Middle East ablaze and created many more 9/11s in Kabul, Kandahar, Baghdad and Basra. The families who lost loved ones in New York deserve justice for what happened to them on that day, but the British and American establishments were never interested in justice for those people. Despite most of the attackers being Saudi, the focus for Bush and the warmongers right away became Afghanistan and then eventually Iraq. Incidentally, the US had opportunities to get access to bin Laden, but instead refused to discuss them or accept it, opting instead to flex its muscles and revenge bomb the wrong people. The response from warmongers to brutal terrorism was to launch their own war on terror. It brought misery, death and destruction and terror to many millions of people. It created a spiral of state surveillance, huge military spending and a politically racist system where people who were Muslim or deemed to be Muslim were treated with disdain, fear and suspicion. That was the logical outcome of a war on terror that needed to dehumanise the people it viewed as collateral damage in order to carry out its murder sprees. How else can you justify the mass bombings of weddings, towns and cities if you don't portray your victims as uncivilised? Mr. Speaker, back in the early 2000s, I joined with millions across the world and hundreds of thousands of people on this island to oppose the launching of the war on Iraq. That war was based on a pack of lies with no weapons of mass destruction ever found, and sadly the prediction that many made at the time that a war of this size and scale would beget more violence and terror has proved to be correct. ISIS and their offshoots didn't exist in Iraq or other countries. The US and the UK's actions created them. The 20-year lesson from the war on terror should be that liberal or humanitarian intervention didn't and cannot work. The United States or the UK does not have a God-given right to be the policeman of the world, overthrowing governments and states it doesn't like. For now, Joe Biden has announced the end of operations across the world to remake other countries. I like to believe that, but frankly, I don't hold out much hope. The US has over 800 military bases across the globe, is constantly locking horns with China as well. So if we're really to learn a lesson from 20 years, it's that wars are a waste of lives, money and resources. Let's make this next decade one in which those banging the war for drum are reminded of the tragedy that war brings. Thank you.
I call Patsy McGlone.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And I listened attentively as Mr. Allister weaved his way through numerous issues there. I thought for a moment there he was going to, or had been lobbied by Mayo to raise the result of the All-Ireland with the EU-UK Joint Committee. But nevertheless, on that, as someone who's married to an Arbo woman, very proud Arbo woman, I have to say I congratulate my sincerest congratulations to the entire Tyrone team, their management, their membership, all the clubs right throughout the county who have contributed to that. And indeed, Arbo, where two of the panel come from. However, indeed I know a number of the members very, very well indeed, and my sincerest congratulations to them on a wonderful victory to bring it home. However, just very briefly too with that, I would have to add that the Arbo parish is similarly tinged with some sadness, given that there was an accident over the weekend and a family are left grieving today. So, great victory, great input from people from the Loch Shore and from the Tyrone team, but I would just record my sympathies to the Canavan and McLernan families on the loss of their son. And with that, Gurramina Mayagad, a Hion Corlia, Agus Arish, Machogardikas, Leforan, Hiron.
And before I conclude this session on member statements, I think it would be remiss if we don't also send a hearty co-guardians to the County Antrim Camogues, who also took an All-Ireland home this weekend as well. So thank you very much and well done, County Antrim, Fosta. Okay, so